After 3 years of trying to solve a string of murders in Macedonia, police finally realized that the serial killer was actually right underneath their noses. In fact, underneath many people's noses, to be precise. He was hiding in plain sight, but in the least likely of places. A journalist, who most people looked unto to break down the local news in the peaceful community of Macedonia. Vlado Taneski worked as a journalist for over 20 years. For most of his career, he worked for local newspapers in his hometown of Kivo, Macedonia. The town was small and quiet, and for the most part, his stories were on the goings-on in the local schools and government offices. Then, in 2005, he got a big story. A woman had gone missing, a local cleaner, and her body had been found sexually assaulted and murdered just outside of the town, her body wrapped in plastic bags. Taneski worked closely with the local police and authorities to cover the murder, with his editor and the residents of the town praising him for his attention to detail. Over the next 3 years, 3 more women would go missing. 2 of them later discovered in the same condition as the first. As he had with the first murder, Taneski covered them all with the same attention to detail, his column quickly becoming a crowd favorite amongst the locals. However, police soon began to become suspicious of Vlado Taneski's coverage. There were details that were popping up in his stories that police noticed hadn't been shared with the public, and they began wondering if Taneski knew who the murderer was and was keeping it to himself so he could continue to get rave reviews for his media coverage. It turned out that the truth was much more sinister. The police had been half right. Taneski did indeed know who was behind the murders, as he himself was the killer. Vlado Taneski was born in 1952 in Kweza, North Macedonia. Both of his parents were strict disciplinarians, and he and his mother, he had an extremely tense relationship. In his late teens, he relocated to Croatia to study journalism. Aged 21, he met his future wife Vesna, who was a law student, and they had 2 children together. After completing his studies, Vlado returned to his homeland and began working life at a local radio station. But by the 1980s and for the next 20 years, was a reporter for the local newspapers. Sadly, in 2002, tragedy struck when his father took his own life, and his mother accidentally overdosed on medication only months later. More bad news was to follow in the next 2 years, when in 2003, and with large financial debts already, Vlado was laid off from Nova Macedonia, one of the local newspaper. Freelancing in a small city with a low crime rate was not easy for the local journalist. But luckily, after many years of hard work, he had gained a large following of fans of his work. Then in 2005, he got his big breakthrough when a series of murderers begun happening in turn. A luck of the Irish, if I may say, or so everyone thought. As he had with the first murder, Vlado covered them all with the same attention to detail. He was more than keen to investigate and report on his own murders. Quite narcissistic, he was always center stage. But police were not fooled by this reporter. He knew something. They begun to look a little deeper, and what they discovered shocked them. For 3 years, Vlado Taneski had been living a double life. His wife of 31 years described him as quiet and gentle, and his co-workers at the Nova Macedonia newspaper called him believably low-key and soft-natured. No one could imagine the darkness that lurked in his mind. However, Taneski's behavior elsewhere in his life suggested otherwise. Of the 4 women who disappeared, the 3 whose bodies were found displayed signs of being viciously sexually assaulted and tortured before being strangled with a phone cord. Nothing said gentle about this murders. It was the knowledge of that detail that led police to Taneski in the first place. Though they had initially revealed that the women had been strangled, they had not said with what. Noticing that Taneski had correctly named the specific type of phone cord used, they arrested him on suspicion of murder. After questioning him, they obtained a search warrant for his home, which revealed further insight into his twisted mind. His home was filled with pornography and notes about the crimes. He had been carrying out the murders, then writing about them in great detail for the paper, as if taunting the police. It's quite ironic how his need for attention and recognition was really his downfall. That need to write down his heinous crimes and broadcast not only himself, but to the rest of the world. What exactly did he want to achieve? As for his motives, the police were unable to discover them. The victims were all cleaners, the same profession that Vlado's mother was in, and bore a striking resemblance to her. Police believed that they might have known his mother, though a further connection was never established. After matching his DNA to the semen found on the victims, Vlado Taneski was arrested. While the police built their case against him, the former reporter ended his own life, just like his father had. Apparently, Vlado did it by drowning himself in a bucket of water. Strange, but I guess that was his cowardly way out, ashamed to face the consequences. As always, let me know what you think about this case, and let us discuss in the comments.